Hi, I'm Kevin Wilson, Director of Media Strategy at Tipping Point. Thanks so much for your interest in our CTV versus linear TV webinar. We put a lot of detail in here about differences between things like CTV and OTT, what linear is, things like streaming video on demand services, fast channels, and importantly, how do consumers think of these things? How do consumers think of connected TV, streaming TV services? Where are people watching nowadays? And how do you buy these two things together? Hopefully at the end of this, you have a good sense of what these services are, what these tactics are, and how to plan them together. And of course, if you get to the end of this and you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out. We'll have our contact information on this screen so that you can see where to email me, where to call us, and where to talk to us about any questions about the differences between these services, how to buy them together, or if you want to talk to us about media planning, we're here for you. Thanks again, and I hope you enjoy the webinar.
We're going to focus today on linear and CTV. And the reason why is we've just been thinking about how a lot of our clients think about buying those together. What are these things, right? Again, like what do we mean by linear? Oftentimes we'll use like kind of traditional interchange with that, but what do we mean by that? What do we mean by CTV? What do we mean by OTT? So we'll kind of explain that, and then we'll go over, how do we target for these different mediums? How do we know what's working, and how do we make a plan that can work for you to ultimately get you your return on ad spend? There.
Hi, yes, this is me. Very excited to be here. So I get to go first. I get to talk about linear TV, the classic powerhouse. I like to say it's like the Duke of the brackets here. They're all perpetually around and always doing well. We want to talk about what counts as linear TV. So starting off really basic, this is broadcast over the air, as well as cable and satellite. This is kind of the foundation of that traditional linear TV. What most people prior to probably 2005 just thought of in their head as TV. This is great for those big moments. This is great for March Madness with the broad reach across multiple demographics in your geography. It's great for local news. This is one of the most trusted places. We'll talk a little bit more later about how it stacks up against some other placements, but this is where people turn to if anything is happening locally or nationally. Your first stop is probably your local news affiliate. This is also great for, like we mentioned, sports and other tentpole events. So things like if you're watching the Oscars or the Grammys. Again, broad reach, but with local targeting, because we can use specific affiliates as well as buy nationally or regionally. There might be a little bit of a higher cost commitment initially with, that added thing where you're only kind of going after a demographic. You can't say, I only want the Trishas of the world, and it finds the Trishas and only delivers to her. But linear gives you that power behind being able to reach out across a broad spectrum of people within your demographic and within your region. It is just really historically entrusted. We have all this data backing so that when you go to forecast, you have years and years of ratings. This is not something where you're guessing. You're like, I guess people are going to watch March Madness. You actually know, over the years, how many people have tuned into particular stations, when did they watch, and how we can reach them best. Cable TV also gives us like by zone. So we can buy specific zones, which kind of breaks out the geography a little bit differently. But anyone like Trish, who's been in these markets for years, knows exactly when they change those zip codes on us. But we can cover those areas the same way. Satellite has kind of taken a step back in the last couple of years, but it's still available, and we can buy that as well on a local geography. Very some DMA, you have a little bit of wiggle room there. But so as we go forward, we'll see how linear stacks up against the digital options.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. And all right, connected TV, the fast break star. All right, so this fun chart here is from Nielsen, and it's actually from February 2025 about where people are or what people are watching on their TVs, right? So they're kind of recording what people are doing on those TVs. So 21.2% was broadcast for the people participating in this, 23.2% was cable, and then 43.5% is streaming. The 12% other are people using a device like DVD players, video games, things like that. So it's recording all of that, and they're trying to get data on what are people actually consuming. And in terms of what is connected TV, it's those streaming services like Hulu, Disney Plus, Tubi, Pluto, Prime Video, so Amazon, things like that. So it's that entire network of stuff. There's subscription and ad-supported services. So there's some subscription-based services that are not ad-supported, so you won't see any ads for those people paying those. That's included in that universe of streaming, that 43.5%. And then there's ad-supported. So that's like Netflix moving into the ad-supported tiers where you get, a few pre-roll ads before you're watching your video-on-demand content. Sometimes you'll hear us refer to what we call fast channels. So those are free ad-supported television channels. So those are things like Tubi and Pluto and Crackle. So those will have a little bit heavier ad inventory. People aren't paying for them. They'll be downloading an app either through like a streaming device like the Fire Stick or Roku, or connecting directly into their smart TVs and downloading the apps there. But that's what those ad placements are. And we'll talk about CTV versus OTT, kind of what's the difference between those. Usually when we're referring to CTV, we mean just the stuff on devices like this. It's just the television that's in your living room set. OTT includes that, but it's kind of everything, right? It's also the apps that are playing video impressions on desktops, tablets, cell phones, things like that. So OTT can encompass stuff that's on your TV in people's living rooms. But usually when we refer to it, as we refer to it in Tipping Point, it's kind of getting more well adopted across like the media space, is OTT is a little bit broader, but includes CTV. All right. And this, we're not going to go into detail of every little thing here, but here's a fun graphic we found and thought would be cool to have in here. It includes some definitions. So you'll see all these things here, the AVOD, SVOD, what that means. So that's all in here for you to go through and look at this. But this is kind of like, what's the content that people are watching? How are they watching it, right? So like what streaming services? So there's, the stuff like Netflix and Hulu, Prime Video, the original content on those, the ad-supported channels like Crackle in here, Tubi, Pluto. You got the services that like will take content and kind of rebroadcast them. Those are the MVPDs, and those are things like Sling, Fubo. So they'll take content from other places, including broadcast channels, and put those on. They have some programmatic inventory in there too, but a lot of times they're rebroadcasting what was already out there. So again, not going to go in this in huge detail, but it's a fun chart to look at where everything is. And you'll see the devices too, because sometimes you'll see in our reports like things happening on like a Samsung TV, right? So again, Samsung TV has a service where you can go through all these channels, and it'll be like a Star Trek channel, just Star Trek all day. They do ad placements in those. We can do some ad inventory in those things as well. All right. Of course, what you're wondering is, all right, who should you bet on, right? What should you go with? And the answer is, oftentimes, if you can, take a hybrid approach, right? Because people are consuming media in different ways. And a lot of times consumers will kind of seamlessly move from one thing to another. They'll go right from broadcast right over to their streaming service, right over to Netflix, right over to Apple TV, whatever it is. They'll move back and forth, right? So what we want to do is just know ahead of time, okay, where are your audiences watching? And what are the goals of your campaign? And so how do we make sure that we're getting the most effective reach and frequency possible across both those channels? So when we can plan those together, we can make your campaigns more efficient and more effective. All right. Well, let's jump into some of the data of where are people actually watching. I'll throw it back to Aaron.
Yeah, so if you look at this chart here, you can kind of see the trend lines of what's happening between what we talked about with linear TV, which is that red line, and CTV. And this is about time spent amongst US adults. So you can kind of see that they're kind of converging. They're coming against each other. And as we go into 2025, we expect those numbers to kind of get closer together and that trend line to continue that way. But there's people still out there, and anyone who tells you that people are only streaming is missing this huge chunk and huge amount of time that people are still spending with linear. So while it is gradually going down a little bit, I think what we're going to see is they're both going to level off. We've kind of reached a saturation point with people, signing up for different subscription services for CTV. and people still engaging with linear and traditional TV products. But one other thing here is, again, we talked about the types of different programs that people are tuning into when they're thinking about linear TV. Again, those live events, the tentpole events. I know, like, maybe I'm on the older side, but if I'm watching the Grammys or the Oscars, it's on ABC. I'm going to be watching it right there. There's a couple of reasons why this is stayed this way. I mean, a part of it is that there's just such a strong news foundation amongst linear TV. And it really has that halo effect for advertisers where it lends this credibility and that you're part of the community and you're really a key piece here. It's also accessible and it's still free over the air, which can't say that for a lot of things. um, we have fast channels and, some of these TV stations are taking advantage and saying, hey, there's an opportunity that there are people streaming. We're going to put our content on a fast as well. So you have these options there. We do know that if you're going with linear TV, it can really cost effective CPMs. And we see some reliability in viewer, feeling about this. I like knowing that if I want to watch Chicago Med, it's on Wednesdays at 8 o'clock on WHEC. And if I don't watch it, then I have to wait a day and then catch it on Peacock. Or we're not going to tune in tonight to WROC so I can see Duke in Arizona. Spoiler alert, it's Duke. Amongst the other 9.4 million people who are watching on traditional channels and consuming March Madness content. So I think when we look at this, we're going to see this trend line kind of converge a little bit, but stay steady. And linear TV is still a really important component when you're thinking about your entire approach and strategy to buying video.
Absolutely. And just to reinforce some of this too, we pulled some data on like where people prefer watching some of these like sporting events. Streaming services are trying to catch up on this, but like you remember like the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight on Netflix, they struggled a bit with trying to get everyone to be able to view that, and there's some issues with it. And again, Amazon Prime, it started out a bit rough. It's gotten a little bit better, but it started out a bit rough with some of the NFL games. And so that's something to keep in mind. Like those initial rough starts mean that people are sticking with like the broadcast channels, so watching those over the air for their NFL games and for the big sporting events, those tentpole events that Aaron was talking about.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else has tried to watch some of the new sportscasters and the talent that they have doing these events. It's they're going in a different direction. It's not the same type of level of sportscasting that I'm used to. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but that's another point is they're all trying to be disruptors and come into the market and be a little bit different. So if that's not the style that you're used to, it's taking a little bit of adjustment for viewers to kind of feel comfortable with like what's being put out for commentary and sportscasting as well.
But, of course, we're going to continue to keep an eye on this, right? Like things do change. But like, for example, I watched a lot of the Olympics on the Peacock app because I wanted to watch the volleyball games after the fact, right? So I wanted to see, all right, what's going on with this? I wasn't able to watch the stuff that was going out over the air. I could get that on demand. So that's good to know. And so as these trends shift, we'll keep an eye on it. But for now, again, linear is still a great place to be, and it's definitely worth consideration in your media budget. Again, streaming is surging, though. It's going up. So you can see this trend. So the data from February 2025 is what you saw on that gauge chart there. So again, it's continuing to grow. And as a percentage of how people are spending their time with this thing here, it's up 108% since 2019. And again, it just continues to rise as a part of that. Now, that said, there's a lot of different options to go through in terms of what's available on streaming TV. I'd mentioned a few of those apps: Hulu, the Prime, Crackle, Pluto, things like that. And finding your audience in these places is the challenge, right? So we need to make sure that we're going after wherever people happen to be buying. And when we talk about the targeting spot, it's less about buying like a specific program, a specific time. It's more about buying like, where is your audience actually consuming stuff? Because they might be switching between 4 different apps at any given time. And another thing, reason streaming is surging among advertisers too, is because it does give you some additional options. There's some data collected about, hey, this is an ad that went out on this device at this time. So you know about this audience. So there's things like display retargeting that we can include as an addendum to CTV campaigns to help extend the impact that your campaign's making, right? So someone who watches a completed ad then gets served display ads afterwards. There's also additional fun things that you can add in there, like the L bars. So I'm sure some of you have seen those. Will be like a part of your screen here and a part of your screen there. A lot of times there'll be sure. A lot of times there'll be a QR code in this L bar, and you can add some additional messaging. Menu screen ads, you can add those as well. So again, as you're looking for what you're going to watch, me, unfortunately, I'm spending 30 minutes trying to figure out and talk with my wife about that. But I'll see the ad that's up there as well. A/B testing commercial options, right? So the fun thing about this is that it's relatively easy to just put both out there and see what is going to do best. Pause ads. So this is starting to become a much more popular thing. So if you're pausing your streaming service, you'll see an ad pop up. And these are nice, non-intrusive things that show up while people are pausing, stepping out to go and grab a new beverage or whatever. Then that's on the screen. And again, a lot of times those have calls to action and QR codes that you can take advantage of. Another way to drive your audience to your website and get them to take an action. Binge ads. So those are... I don't know if you've ever seen this, but sometimes they'll say, do you want to watch a longer ad in exchange for not having any additional breaks? That's what a binge ad is. So it's an opportunity to get your full message out there in a contained setting. People know how long it's going to be. They do that. Countdown ads to the break, another one. All right. It's kind of engaging with the platform as it is. And interactive ads too. So you'll see some of those. You can take your TV remote and interact with the device, do trivia questions. You can shop product inventories. There's a whole bunch of different things that you're able to do with interacting with some of these ads. So this is one of the reasons why advertisers are looking at this and companies are looking at this to take advantage of these additional tools you get with connected TV. Aaron, I'll throw it over to you for the spending trends.
Yeah. All of these kind of points we've made in the last few slides are kind of leading to this conclusion amongst advertisers of how they want to split their budgets, where they want budgets to come from. So we're seeing, connected TV and social media are kind of like needing for budget increases. 45% of advertisers are planning to spend more on both CTV and social media as we head into 2025 and looking ahead even 2026 and 2027. But video, digital audio, and retail media as well are kind of surging behind it. And I think part of it is, all those things that Kevin touched upon. Really being in touch with, attribution, being able to follow where are your consumers buying the audience instead of the program. And then, all those interactive pieces as well, because those kind of give you the advantage of A/B testing and getting real-time data back. And just really kind of building a full funnel campaign. And I think here you're going to see this. If you go back and you look, the past 6 years at all of these graphs, they've always underestimated the CTV spend. Linear has been pretty close to what the year ended with. So I think what they're not realizing is a lot of times there is additional budget that is being carved out to build a CTV campaign to run alongside linear. And that goes back to that hybrid approach that we were discussing with our lovely overlapping basketballs, is this idea that, it's not an either or proposition. It's finding that way because you can speak directly to your consumers and you can take advantage of all of the things CTV offers while still retaining all the advantages of broad reach that linear offers as well.
Absolutely. All right. So let's talk about what goes into building your championship strategy.
Okay. I'm not the coach of the Gators, but he knows what he's talking about. But so for targeting, when we look at targeting here, obviously with linear, like we were just talking about, the best of both worlds, linear has that broad demographic. CTV provides us more hyper-targeted, which uses first-party and third-party data. And just as a reminder, first-party data is really just that stuff that you can supply to us. These are lists, maybe your CRM lists. Maybe this is us placing a pixel to gather site visitors, just knowing who has interacted with you in the past and kind of uploading that and allowing the platforms the ability to find those people and then serve them ads and kind of interact with them that way. Third-party data is kind of pre-built audience segments that can be provided by a third party. So this is kind of, we've reached out. Equifax offers, who's made a purchase on a credit or debit card, or maybe who has just purchased a home, so that you know who to target with home improvement products. This third-party data can be bought, and then you can implement your campaign and reach that audience. Looking at, that again, an idea of like linear, we kind of buy the program, and CTV, we kind of buy the audience. It's not really only that way, but it's an easy way to kind of think about it. So linear is great, reaching those large groups with branded messaging, using demographics and geography. And this, again, going back, I can't emphasize enough how important the live news, sports, and tentpole events are still on linear. But streaming also allows us to buy the audience. So whatever they're watching. So maybe they're, sick of the Oscars and they flip over to Netflix to watch something else. Or they're like me, they get obsessed with something and I start binging and they watch the 90 minutes or the 90-second spot so they don't get interrupted and they can switch over to something else. These are all the advantages of having both. So you don't have to predict where your audience is going to be. You can find them. You do know, based on historical data, a few key things so you can buy both to really build out the strong plan, and using both methods of targeting so that you're getting all the reach and frequency that you need for your campaign. Yeah. So again, like we were mentioning before about the budgets, there is some flexibility on both CTV and linear. You don't necessarily have to go all in, and Trish can attest to this. When you buy key things with great efficiency, like news and sports, and you let Trish negotiate for you, you're going to get a really great CPM and really high efficiency and effectiveness on the linear side. And with CTV, you know that impression is going to somebody who's in your audience pool. There's no waste. And while there is co-viewing, which is great for CTV, you can gain a net new, at least one person in front of that TV and in that household is a member of your audience. And then when we talk about spots, it's a little bit different with CTV, right? It's a one-to-one interaction. We show, we want to reach the Trishes of the world. We send the Trish-based ad to the Trish audience and Trish sees it. And whereas if Trish buys us a spot on WHEC, it's going out to everybody who's watching the news at that time. Again, like we mentioned before, this hybrid approach of being able to have both gives you the best of both worlds, but it also gains you effective reach and frequency. Again, I keep harping on our little overlapping basketballs, but there's a little chart underneath that kind of gives you an idea of like if you only did, this CTV buy, your audience is only this size and your frequency would be here. Versus if you buy linear, you're going to reach this many people this many times. So your reach and frequency kind of are very different based on your buy with linear or CTV, but that overlap space is interesting because you get that ability to increase your frequency amongst that core group that is definitely in your wheelhouse and also paying attention on this broadband of linear. So you get to kind of like understand a little bit more about getting to that effective reach and frequency point. We also want to, mention a little bit about the experience. So your consumers watching, they're used to on linear, they're well versed. They know exactly how many ads are going to run in the local break. When, they appear in programs, they know, their program starts and then a couple minutes in, they get a break. Streaming audiences, especially when it's paid, there's a little bit of pushback. They kind of expect a minimal amount of ads. They expect those shorter breaks. And as Kevin mentioned with the countdowns, they know exactly how much time they have. But they do also expect personalized and very relevant ads to them. Like when I keep talking about the Trishes of the world, Trish, CTV may be expecting the ad to speak directly to people like her. Whereas broadcast, we kind of expect it to kind of talk to a little bit more people while, hitting a message that's relevant to you. So this is another consideration here. And as you look at some of these investment levels over to the here, you kind of can see like when people are thinking about their omnichannel approach, why they would want to have both involved in there and why they would want to keep their investment or raise their investment, particularly in social and CTV.
Right. Again, it's all about matching like what your customers' expected experience is, right? And then being as efficient as possible, taking advantages of the advantages of each platform to help reach them and plan your budget efficiently. All right. we come down to measuring success, right? Like, so as we're doing these campaigns, as we're seeing how they are executed and evaluated, we have a couple different things that we're looking at in terms of how do we know that this is working? How do we know that this is reaching the folks that we want to reach, right? So one is on the linear side, it's ratings, right? So again, an evaluation of how many people are watching these stations based on surveys and other data collection, GRPs, gross rating points. Again, how much of your audience is being reached with the plan that we had. And of course, like the total number of impressions that we're estimated to have gotten from these campaigns. And the other thing that we're doing as an agency now is also doing things like correlation analysis, right? So we want to know, all right, if we have a campaign out in the market, if we're running on TV, well, is that impacting some of your core metrics? And a lot of times we'll see that in things like, are you getting more direct and organic visitors to the website? What's the relationship between your campaigns, maybe for a specific product or for a brand awareness campaign, and the lift that you're getting on your website for key products or key searches based on the ads that we're running? So we're trying to do that analysis, say, okay, is this making an impact? Is this making a difference? Is this holding us at baseline? So that's part of what we measure to determine, is this actually working? On connected TV, we have a little bit more direct feedback with this stuff. So yes, we're looking at impressions. Again, how many times did this ad show? And then reach. How many unique people were shown this ad? And from that, we can calculate frequency. How many times did they see it? We get pretty close to real-time analytics on that, so it's nice to see, again, how many people have been reached right now. And from there, we're also able to get things like visit and conversion attribution, right? So again, if someone in the household is shown your ad on CTV, we're able to see like, okay, did they then make it to your website within so many days of being shown your ad, right? And when we go to like the analysis side, it's like, okay, like how many days did it take on average? Did people usually go to the website the next day or the same day or 3 days later? What does that relationship look like? And what does that teach us about how effective your campaign is and how your customers are responding to this? So you're able to get a lot of detail from connected TV campaigns in terms of, again, where did your inventory show up? What channels are effective? How are they driving your actual results? Not just the website visits, but lead and form fills too. Can you match that back to the audiences that were showing your ads? And then how do you know if it was effective? And from there, you're able to figure out, what is your return on ad spend? What's the difference here? Should we invest more in this channel? So you bring all that together, right? Again, we're still recommending combining linear and CTV for your best return on ad spend, or ROI, return on investment. As for planning stuff, again, we want to know, like, where are your audiences watching? Know them and target them well. Some of them are going to be watching on just linear. Some of them are going to be watching on just CTVs. Many of them will be watching on both. And what we try to do is we try to do this like linear reach extension, right? Again, how many more people are we able to reach by adding on that CTV element that we might not reach targeting specific programming on linear that we might be missing in those spaces? Or and that might apply for a brand awareness campaign. We want to extend the number of people seeing this. Or maybe we are doing a demand gen campaign, right? We want people to get leads, and we know that we need an effective frequency of 6 or 7 in order to get leads, right? That's the average number of times people need to see your spot in order to take an action. Okay, we can also close those circles a little bit too and make sure that we're getting higher frequency with our core audiences. So as we're doing that, as we're measuring what works, what channels are driving your actual results, what's our effective frequency, measuring that success, we can continue to build on your wins, figure out what's actually working, invest more in that, and then kind of iterate and do better and better to try to make your campaigns more efficient and ultimately bring more customers, clients to your business. All right. Real world bracket busters. Aaron, talk about those case studies.
All right, here's my Cinderella story one here. This was a client. He was an agency that worked with blind, trying to get them employment and make sure they had accommodations. We implemented CTV as part of their broader strategy. It was a new platform for them because they really wanted to reach kind of multiple people in the environment. So we had really strong audiences. So we wanted to reach the visually impaired, their employers, and everybody in their support network. So caretakers, all the other people involved there. If you go to the next slide, here's the key elements of what we put together for this. We had used CTV specifically for accessibility and engagement. We do know that video ads had we used audio descriptions and all of the bells and whistles on the back end. We also had the ability on the ads for a very large QR code. So people who had limited visual impairment could still see it, and they have devices that will help them scan. We also used geo-targeting and audience segmentation so that we knew which message to deliver. So we had one that specifically talked directly to the visually impaired versus the employers and the caregivers. The QR code integration was really great because it gave us this trackable element. With this QR code, we could see quickly who accessed the website, and it provided a little bit of a more direct one-to-one. We could see exactly how many. The exposure led to the web traffic. We also did, as Kevin mentioned, a retargeting campaign. So we were able to retarget those who had seen our CTV ad by sending them digital display ads, which they're not going to know this with wine. Most of them on their phones, it will read out the text of a display ad. So we're really excited to use all the accessibility component, but it really strengthened brand recall. And it kept this agency top of mind for everybody who saw the CTV content. So go to the next slide, you can see our results. So with over 3 million impressions, we were able to reach everybody we needed to in our audience. We had great frequency. 108 QR code scans. Now that number for CTV is pretty high, especially knowing that we had to have that really large scale one to make sure that visually impaired could see it, and knowing that a portion of our audience was just not going to be able to interact with it the same way. But we did see a 17% increase in awareness. We did a post-campaign survey, and people who didn't know the agency before knew it after. So we really wanted to kind of take away from this that, this it was really effective in reaching a very hard-to-reach community with accessibility. And also by using the QR code, we're really able to track to see which types of people interacted and getting them to the site and what they followed through with, because we did have a form fill as well. This is a bigger one. This was a much bigger price point here. This was for an economic development campaign on a government scale. We really wanted to reach out to a neighboring city, large city, and drive more website traffic from them and make them more aware of their the reasons why they should companies should be moving there. This was a dual platform strategy where we would linear and OTT together. So again, that my favorite little graphic, those basketballs overlapping, that's kind of how we worked there. Yeah, so we did linear to the optimization for maximum efficiency. So rather quickly, based on the data that we had gathered for using this platform, we identified high viewership news programs that were having more of an effect. So that correlation that Kevin was talking about. When did we see people actually going to the website? Where did they come? Shifted budget after we saw the initial information. We were able to move away from some of the morning talk into the 7 a.m. news program, which just had a much higher exposure rate. And we saw much more engagement on the site, even that early in the morning. And we increased our placements in the 5:30 news slot. So we kept our budget with our TV stations. We just found the best places for them. We're able to really capture this, peak local news viewing audience. On the other side, we had the OTT streaming portion going, which was giving us that more precision and allowing us to retarget later. This complemented that OTT component. So we were making sure that anybody who wasn't engaging on linear TV, we were still finding them. And this was a lot of the younger demographic, the younger side of it. And it gave us a little bit more targetability to look for those who kind of fit our audience profile, like entrepreneurs or people who worked at a certain size business or were business decision makers. And we built from there a retargeting audience, which allowed us to send digital displays, which gave them a clickable component as well. which outside of QR codes with CTV or linear, you don't really have a lot of, you could put your URL up on screen, but this gave us that clickable option to make it as easy as possible. And our results, we saw a 15% increase in website traffic from the campaign. And within that bump, when we changed the programming to be more effective, we did see an additional bump right after we changed that. We had more efficient impressions, and by optimizing that linear TV placement and keeping our budget there, we just got those better response rates, and we really improved engagement from the OTT audience by having that retargeting. So they're able to click on that, and we were able to keep reaching them to reach, the magic number. And let me tell you, for this type of campaign, the magic number is not 7. The magic number is somewhere closer to 15 exposures.
All right. So now we'll talk about how do we work with you to build these types of campaigns? What we do, and many of you are already familiar with this, is, we talk to you again. What is your marketing objective? What do you actually want to accomplish? Is it brand awareness? Do you want, people to keep you top of mind when they need an injury attorney, right? Are you trying to promote a specific credit union product, right? What is your actual goal? What are you trying to do? What is your overall budget too? Again, how we plan out the campaign kind of depends on what you have in terms of resources too, right? So we need to be efficient within whatever budget you have. We're going to try to reach your audience as efficiently and effectively as possible. And of course, what is that audience, right? Do we have first-party data that we can use for recurring customers? Do we have to rely on third-party data to try to reach people who are in market for whatever product or service that you're offering? What's the timing of the campaign? Is this going to be an annual campaign? Is it going to go on all year long? Is it a 4-week campaign? Is it a 3-month campaign? So again, however long that is, we need to make sure we have enough time to be effective across whatever channels that we're going to be using. And of course, what's that goal, right? What do you want people to do directly in response to that ad? Do you want them to, again, just keep you in mind, just to know about you? Do you want them to go to the website, go to a specific URL and explore the product or service that you're offering? So knowing all those together, those are the questions that we're going to ask to help plan your campaigns and to make them effective. And then as the campaigns are going, we're looking at again, what are the responses people are having to those campaigns? So here is a creative performance that we're looking at, right? So again, if we're doing an A/B test, we need to have enough impressions to do an effective A/B test. But if we're doing an A/B test across creative, which one is effective? Which one is more likely to be associated with driving traffic to your website or providing a lift in leads? And so as we're looking at that, we say, okay, maybe creative A is the clear winner, and we want to just stick with that because we're going to be more efficient and more effective by sticking with creative A. And if we plan this out ahead of time, we know we're going to have 2 creatives. We need the budget for that. We can make this an effective test to help you know what message is resonating with the people you need to reach the most. We talked about the frequency thing, right? So in this example, the effective frequency was 2, right? Again, how many times do people need to see it before they usually take action? Is it 2, 3, 4, 5, 15? Whatever it is, right? We want to do that. And then, if it turns out to be lower, as we're going through the campaigns, we're going to say, okay, maybe we need to cap the frequency. We don't need this person to see this ad 20 times. We want to make sure that they're only seeing it, 5 times, really. That's all they need to see it. So that's one of the things that we're looking at as the campaign goes, and we get more data to learn what is effective. And finally, and again, what we want to see is the best we can. What is that attribution? So this is a pretty big campaign. So there's a lot of data behind what drove these specific results. But, are we able to get, attribution data on the linear households, the linear only households? How many site visits did you get from that? How many leads did you get from that? What are the overlap? Were we more efficient when we had overlapping audiences? What were we getting from the digital campaigns? So we're looking at all this and then able to decide, okay, do we need to make a change to how we're doing things to be more efficient and more effective in creating your media plan? And ultimately, that's what we want. We want you to have the taste of victory, which is, the return on ad spend, right? You want your media dollars to make an impact for your business, to help you grow, to help you support your teams. So to review all this, again, we want to help you reach your audiences. We want to help your media dollars go further. We want to help your company meet and exceed its goals. And we want to provide more insights to help you do more of what's working. Again, we want you to be effective. We want you to be efficient. That's the value that we provide here at Tipping Point is we want you to know that you can trust us with your media dollars to help your business thrive. On a buzzer. Interactive questions. Okay, so what I mean by that is that if with certain connected TV placements, you can use your remote and like move around the screen, right? So if you want to ask a question, like it could be a trivia question, it could be scrolling through your product feed. There's the pull that and to have people have some interactive element with your ad. So that's a great way to get people focused on what it is on the screen. It gives them something to do, and they're going to have higher recall for that, and you can follow up all the action on those. And then the QR code thing, again, that's not limited to CTV. You could do that anywhere, right? So, and it's a great way to be able to measure that direct impact. Again, you're able to see how many people scanned it. We would tag it with codes to say, okay, how many people scanned this thing and actually ended up on your website from these ads. So it's definitely something you should consider. And again, we're happy to talk to you about the specifics of when that might be a good thing to include in your ad creative.
I would say too with QR codes, give people a reason to click on those. And it used to be like I just did it so I could order my burrito, but like now I think for most people, like in order to get them to be like, why should I look at this? Are you going to give me a brochure? Is there something that I'm going to be exposed to that is above and beyond? So just thought, kind of having like a little highlight of what the QR code will get them gets more people to be involved. We can't all be Coinbase just floating around there and people didn't know what it was at the time. We're beyond that now. We're at the point where people like need a reason. So give them a good reason to scan your QR code.
Question?
Yes. So do you recommend, there's the QR code, we sometimes use it to get to our website or a specific page versus specific promotion. Is that a good enough reason to use a QR code, or should they really be getting something out of it, like a free guide or a free article or something like that?
I mean, it can be a value prop. Like it can just be that like, hey, scan here to go to the #1 credit union in your area or open an account with your #1 credit union. It can be something like that. You don't necessarily have to offer something tangible, but you do have to kind of highlight. It's almost like, when you think about your CTAs being strong enough, it's like almost a sub CTA to kind of get them to go to your page or wherever you're trying to lead them with the QR code.
Yeah, could it be something like scan here to start the application process?
Yeah, telling people exactly what it is, it also prevents them from navigating away because they know what they're going to get when they scan this, right? Like you knew back during COVID that if you scanned the QR code, you were going to get the menu. You knew that you weren't going to get a coupon. You weren't going to be able to order directly from your phone, or I don't know if you have a fancy restaurant, maybe they would let you, but for the most part, it was you knew what you were getting, and so people were willing to do it. So it's kind of that mentality as well. Like we're bringing people in and we're saying like, hey, scan here to do X. Scan here to get this. There's an incentive, and then there's an expectation that's met by whatever they get on the other end of that QR code.
Help tease out the truly unique audiences across linear and connected CTV, OTT, whatever acronym you want to use, to know that you are truly reaching new incremental audience versus just getting more impressions by overlapping audiences.
Platforms that implement something called ACR, which is everything that they say passes the glass of your TV. So your Samsung TV, if you read the fine print before you plugged in your connected TV, is collecting a lot of data. It knows things about you, and it knows everything that is going across your screen. So what it's doing is it's saying that, Phil, you were exposed to this ad on WROC, and then you were also exposed when you were watching Hulu Live. And then you were also exposed with Peacock. And it kind of is able to build out audiences that way. Also, the third party, audiences that are built out, as well as first party, they match based on IP address to track, where people are spending their time and how they're spending their time with their connected TV, as well as the other devices in their home. So that's when the OTT part comes in. That's when the social, that's when display native, all of those things. They have a lot of data on you. Not to scare anybody. We don't say it's scary. We say it's sophisticated. So they are able to know those things. And so when you're talking about building out those audiences, on the linear side, they know roughly based on ACR data what people have been watching in this audience versus where they have their IP address has pinged for different programming on CTV.
Thank you. So it's mostly through the OEMs like the LGs, the Samsungs, the folks that own the devices that you're getting that. And this is a totally unfair question, so I don't know. So,
That's okay.
by virtue of looking at the people that have these advanced devices already, does that potentially skew towards the folks that are more inclined to stream, or does that not make a difference?
It doesn't make a difference because most people now, after that analog digital dumpster fire where we got rid of lovely analog stuff, most people have now converted to the lower price, connected TVs. It's, obviously you're going to miss out on a component that, does not connect to the internet with their TV. And those tend to be that older demographic that we are still, activating against for with linear. So the lack thereof also proves where they will be. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you for the question, Phil.
Okay, one more while we're at it. Do you see or suggest any differences in creative across platforms? Is one type of creative more responsive or better in streaming application or connected environment versus linear?
Associating with the programming environment that you're in. Connected TV is very similar to the linear experience for the consumer. They do have like we mentioned with like the interactive ads, there's a little bit of more of an expectation that they'll be more personalized. So your linear TV ad can be for your broader audience. You can position things a little bit more open, like similar to what you've probably been running for linear for, a long time, whether it's branding or, starting new people to consideration. Whereas with CTV, you can use it as more of a performance, option as well. So you can kind of be a little bit further down the funnel with some of your messaging. You can also sequence your ads. So, the way we used to do linear, you'd have a month or month and a half of one ad, and then you'd run the next one that kind of gave more information, or you'd have them running concurrently to, kind of get people to go, or even using bookends. Whereas with CTV, you can kind of track, did they not only watch the first ad in your ad sequence, did they interact with it? Did they engage with it? Did they watch it through to completion? Did they see it on a CTV device? Then did they see it on their mobile device? Did you re-engage with them with the recharging display ad? And then you can move on to the next component. So the other thing with CTV, we do have, all those interactive capabilities, which are great. So if you do go with a QR code or anything that is trying to elicit an immediate response, that should be up for the entirety of your ad so that people have the ability to access it. Again, most people are watching with their phones in their hand or next to them on the couch, gives them time to get up and scan, and not only make the decision that they want to scan it, but also have the time to actually do it. So that's another best practice. Additionally, I think this goes for everything these days with TV, both linear and CTV, always having a voiceover that is strongly connected very much helps with as second screen viewers, people looking down at their phones, getting their attention again. We could do a whole separate one on attention metrics, which is a whole other ballgame. But if you're trying to think through, creative wise, what do we want to do? You can stick with the linear one the same way, maybe add a little bit more voiceover, CTV, pervasive call to action, QR code up on screen the whole time, more personalized messaging since you have that ability to, like in our example with the visually impaired, we were able to direct messages that spoke directly to visually impaired person versus their employer versus their caregiver. And we were able to deliver those messages that were personalized and tailored to them, which again brings more attention to the ad. If you feel somebody's speaking directly to you, you're going to watch that through and it's going to resonate more than if it's feeling like it's just talking to anybody. I could be anybody watching this.
Hi, Kevin Wilson again. I hope you enjoyed the webinar on CTV versus linear TV. If you have any questions because you weren't in the room to ask them, again, feel free to reach out. My email is going to be on the screen. You can reach out there or reach out through our website. And we're happy to answer any questions you have about CTV, linear TV, and of course, buying them together. And if you do want to talk to us about doing a media plan and planning out how you make sure you can get as efficient as possible when buying your CTV and linear TV together, we're happy to have a conversation with you. Thanks again. Take care.